Hello, wonderful people. This is Tom Check with Choice Coaching, where we help you unlock your inner awesomeness. And today we're continuing the theme from our most recent video on conflict and stepping out of conflict and into joy. We identified the two different types of conflict with others, conflict with self. We started identifying those underlying pieces of what causes conflict. And it's attachment to an idea, often caused by fear or hope, that's grounded in either the future or the past. And today we want to talk about another tool that you can use other than just kind of mindful presence, another tool that you can use to start to overcome conflict and start to step into more joy in your daily lived experience. And there's two tools we're going to talk about today, and they're both, I got a big old grin on my face because they're the fun ones. They're often, one of them at least, is almost always fun. And the other is almost always feels great. So there's a win-win here when you use these tools. And they sound really simple, and they are, but they're not always easy. So the first one is curiosity. When I'm attached to an idea, I can't be curious about somebody else's experience or even my own experience because I'm in defense. But the thing that helps get me out of defense is curiosity. To start to wonder, what's going on? Why do I feel this way? Why do you have this conflict? Ask yourself that question without any guilt or shame or any judgment on somebody else. Just get curious about, hey, this exists. Why does it exist? What's causing it to exist? Curiosity is a game changer because it's fun to be curious. It takes you back to when you were a kid and you learned how the world worked. And then you kind of solidified some of that stuff that you learned so that you would never have to think about it again. And maybe it's time to rethink some of those things. If people should always, and that's what you learned when you were younger, maybe it's time to get curious about whether or not that's true. Should everybody believe in God? Should everybody not believe in God? Should everybody have the same political stance? Should that person load the dishwasher the right way, which is my way? And a lot of times what happens when you enter curiosity and you start asking these questions is you'll have kind of a double think moment where part of you says, yes, of course that's the way it should be. That's the way it should always be. That's the way it has always been. That's what we want. And then there's another part of you that goes, that's just silly. That's just silly. And curiosity gives us the space to recognize the silliness that comes from attachment to ideas. So that's our first tool, curiosity. The next tool is empathy. Putting yourself in the shoes of others, especially when you are dealing with conflict with others. It's a little harder for a lot of us to have empathy for ourselves, but it's a little easier for us to have empathy for others. So really identifying what that person does, believes, is, why that actually makes sense for them. What things could be going on in their lives that are causing them to act in that way. And do those make sense? Not do you believe them, right? And that's where our defenses start to come up again, is when we think, well, then if it's okay for them, then I have to start to do it. If somebody's a Christian and that's okay, then I have to be a Christian. Or if somebody's a lesbian and I think that's okay, then that makes me a lesbian. Or whatever. But all of that's total bunk, right? And when we see those defenses come up, to get curious about why those defenses are coming up, and then to step back into empathy for that other person. They are who they are. And they are who they are for a perfect reason. They didn't show up there by accident any more than you showed up here by accident. They do, and they believe, and they say, and they are all the things that they are and do and say for good reason. Can you start to understand what those reasons are? when you're able to step into empathy, it's a total game changer for conversations with others and for conflict. Because you recognize already, just after our last video, that conflict is within you. It is not necessarily between you and somebody else. You can feel conflict to somebody else and they don't even know you exist. Think of the person that accidentally cuts you off and drives off. They didn't think about you the rest of the day, but you were in conflict with them all day. And this plays out in all our different pieces and parts of lives, with our family, with our loved ones, with total strangers. Conflict is within you. Empathy and curiosity are two tools that help you step out of conflict within yourself and understand the other person. And that's powerful. And that starts to bring you back to present, right? To go back to that first tool we talked about in the last video. When you're curious, you have to pay attention in now. And when you're empathizing, you have to pay attention to whether or not now reflects what you believe the other person is experiencing. It's pretty cool, huh? So your assignment, if you want to accept such from me, is go ahead and, if you haven't already, identify the conflicts that you're feeling and with whom. Is it with others? Is it with yourself? What's the attachment to an idea? What's the idea that you're attached to that's creating that conflict? The should. They should do this, I should do this. Identify that. Then identify, are you in fear or hope, right? Go through that whole first video, all of that homework if you haven't already. And then start to get curious. Start to ask yourself some questions of like, what's causing this? Why is this so important to me? What do I think would happen if I didn't believe this? What do I think would happen if they changed? And then start to get empathetic. Start to identify why they might act the way they act. Assuming that they're not insane, and I know that there's that funny part of us that wants to think that everybody who doesn't act like we act is insane. And deep down, you know that's wrong. Deep down, you know it's not true. So instead of just saying and writing them off as insane people who act illogically, get back in touch with reality, recognize that most people are sane, most people act rationally, and they do what they do for a good reason, and start to figure out what those reasons might be. See what happens. I guarantee you will feel less conflict. You might feel more joy. You might feel more happiness. You might feel more connection. It doesn't take a lot of time. It does take some time and energy. Not much, but you have to take the time to sit and write, and you have to make the investment of energy to do the curiosity, to do the empathy, so that you can start to understand the person you're in conflict with. But the payoff is big. Because when you're not in conflict, when you don't have conflict within you, you got a lot more room for love and joy and actually living your life instead of living in the past or living in the future. So give it a whirl. Let me know how it goes. I'd love to hear from you. And until next time, keep up the awesome work. I look forward to connecting with you again soon.